Hello, my name is Mark Prather. I'm broker of Mark One Real Estate and Mortgage. Imagine a life with no money worries. The bills are paid and you have all the income you need. How does that feel? Or the current reality of most Americans struggling to pay their bills, can't save enough money to make a difference. 65% of Americans will never be able to retire, and that number is growing every year. People struggle financially for two reasons. First is they simply can't save enough money. And if you're unable to save enough money, then you're going to be unable to create the investment income that you need. We need to have a monthly income that we can rely on beyond our job. But if we're unable to accumulate the money that we need, then we're going to be unable to create that investment income. We can help solve these problems. In this presentation, I'm going to share with you a step-by-step process of how we can solve these very important problems and create the financial security and the financial freedom that we all desire. So can you save enough money? Let's analyze. The average person, and when I say the average person, in this country, 90% of the people are unable to save more than $500 a month. So most people are averaging somewhere between $100 to $300 a month. Let's analyze where that puts us. Per $100 that you're saving each month, assuming a 6% return, and let me share with you where we got that 6%. Most of us are saving some money. We have a little money in our checking account. We save a little money in our savings account. Both of those we're getting next to no interest on. And we have some money maybe in a 401k or an IRA, or we're putting some money into the stock market. And the investment returns are going to range 5, 6, 7, 8%. So basically, if we take an average of all of that, you're going to be looking at, the typical person is going to be looking at around a 6% return. So if you're saving $100 a month, receiving a 6% return, in 15 years, you will have accumulated $27,931. In 20 years, it's $44,142. So let's talk about that for a moment. If you're looking to retire in 20 years and you've saved $100 a month and you've accumulated $44,000, how long will you be able to retire? Now, not including the rate of inflation, just at today's cost, $44,000 for most people is at best a year. But we go forward 20 years with the inflation rate, it's going to be significantly less. So we'll address that in a moment. But you can see $100 per $100, you're looking at $44,000 in savings, or at best 1 year worth of retirement funds. So in analyzing how hard it really is to retire, let's do this 20-year scenario. If you currently have $10,000 saved and you save $400 a month for the next 20 years, and your current expenses are $4,000 a month, half of that being rent and the other half being your normal monthly expenses like car payments and gas and food and that. In 20 years, the monthly income using a 6% rate of return on your savings that would have accumulated is only $1,341 a month. Meanwhile, that $4,000 in monthly expenses has grown to $7,224 a month because of inflation. We've used a 3% inflation rate, which is the average historical inflation rate for the last 100 years. When we add those two numbers together, we have a retirement shortfall of $5,883 per month. This demonstrates why so few people are able to retire in today's world. So how do we solve this problem of the inability to save enough money? If the average American is saving $100, $200, $300, $400 a month, and they're only actually preserving 1 to 4 years worth of retirement income, how do you fix it? The answer is through traditional means, meaning what most Americans are taught to do, which is saving the money in their bank, in their IRA, in their 401k, being invested in stocks and mutual funds. It's not going to happen. But there is a solution. There is a path, and I'm going to share with you that path as we go forward. What you're looking at here is in Los Angeles County, the median home values dating back to 1990 was $200,000. Now, if you notice, during the early 90s, there was a recession and property values went sideways and in fact went down a couple percent. The mid 90s, we came out of the recession and property values started to escalate. And as we got into the late 90s, the subprime phenomena began and lenders started getting more aggressive and loosening up lending requirements, and property values continued to rise. And we had the longest rise in property values on record, where we had a run up of property values from 1996 all the way up to 2007. Then 2008, 2009, we had the financial collapse and the meltdown of the stock market and the real estate market. And you can see we bottomed there in the 2008, 2009 period. And then property values started recovering. Now our graph goes to January 2014. Over the past 24 months, property values have risen all the way up to their previous peaks. So let's compare how the stock market did in the same period. In 1990, the Dow Jones Industrial was at 2,500. Now, early 90s, same recession. Stock market basically went sideways. Mid 90s, we came out of the recession. Stock market starts to expand, grows and grows. Then in 2002, there you see there was a blip. Most of that was the dot-com bubble bursting. Then off to the races again with the economic expansion from 2002 till the ultimate meltdown in 2008, 2009. And then the recovery back up to, you can see, of 2014. So we have this 24-year expansion. Now, what you might note is that this 24-year economic history with the Dow Jones very much mirrors the real estate market in Los Angeles. Now, the real estate market and the stock market do not move in lockstep. However, what is important to note is that they are both tied to the economy, and that's what these two charts reflect. The economy expands, does better, they both do better. The economy contracts and struggles, they both ultimately get affected. So the question is, using this information, where was the smart place to put your money? Let's compare the Dow and the real estate market side by side. In 1990, if you invested $12,615 into the Dow, that's your investment value. 24 years later, that money would have grown to $81,596. Your total return would have been $68,980, or your annual rate of return is 21.87%. Now, let's compare that to the real estate market. If you'd bought a median priced home in Los Angeles County for $200,000 using $12,615 as your down payment, which would have been an FHA type of loan, your present value on that property 24 years later would be $486,000, and your total return is $273,414. The difference, you can see, you would have made over 4 times as much money using real estate as an investment vehicle as the Dow. The rate of return, 137%. So why is that? Well, here's the reason. Real estate has what I call an unfair advantage. If you look on the top line, as far as cash investment, comparing the Dow and real estate, same amount, $12,000 is $12,000. But look at line 2 is investment value. Here's the unfair advantage that real estate has, is the asset value of the real estate was $200,000, not $12,000. So your return on your investment of $12,000 was attached to the asset value of $200,000. This is called leverage. The advantage that leverage provides is that you're getting this rate of return on a much greater amount than you've actually invested. And because of that, the rate of return on real estate, which typically, if you look at the history of real estate, the average appreciation rate for a property in California dating back to 1968 has been 7.3%. So if you compare the appreciation rate in real estate to the stock market, and let's even use a more conservative number, if you were to use 5%, 6% on real estate return, it's still going to dwarf your return on the stock market because of the leverage factor. That asset value difference is dramatically superior to the investment value in the stock market, and that's how you can create these phenomenal returns. These returns are the solution to the problem of not being able to save enough money, which is the challenge that 90% of Americans are struggling today. So knowing this, knowing that leverage creates this phenomenal opportunity, creates this incredible unfair advantage with your money, how do you take this information, or what do you do with this information? How do you use it to your advantage so that you can get positioned so that you are, first, secure financially, and second, able to retire and not have to work again and have the cash flow you need to pay your bills? All right, step one is in making your first home investment. If you're a renter, look at this as a scenario of you purchasing your first property. For this exercise, we're going to walk through assuming that you have already purchased a property. So let's assume that you purchased a property for $400,000. When you purchased that property, you put $14,000 down, so your mortgage balance was $386,000, creating an equity position of $14,000, and you have a 30-year mortgage. Your expenses on this property, you would have had a mortgage of $1,843. Taxes, as far as property taxes, would be $417 a month. Your insurance on the house, $112. And if it's not a condo, there have been no homeowners association. So your total monthly payment is $2,372 a month. If you purchased this property 5 years ago for $400,000 and it appreciated at a 6% rate of return, the current market value would be $535,000. Your loan balance would have declined to $356,000, creating an equity position of $178,000. And then, as you can see, in 10 years, that equity grows to $403,000, while the market value of the property rises to $716,000, and your loan balance drops to $313,000. In 15 years, your equity grows to $698,000, and in 20 years, you have turned $14,000 as a down payment into $1,087,000. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment and repeat. You've turned $14,000 into $1 million. What do you think the chances are that you would have been able to save $1 million in that 20-year period? Very, very difficult thing to do that few Americans can accomplish. So this is the first step through our process. So let's analyze the returns on this investment. In 5 years, you made $178,000. Your total return on your $14,000 investment is 904%. And your compounded annual growth rate is 59%. Call your local stockbroker and ask him if he can get you a 59% compounded rate of return. Not going to happen. 900% as a total return over 5 years, a phenomenal number that not only do few homeowners realize this, but few realtors know this as well. All right, step one is we've acquired the property. You've seen how you've created the tremendous wealth through that property. But we got to keep in mind, here are the two things that we need to happen for you to be financially secure. The first thing that we have to have happen is we have to have a home for you to live in, that you have a roof over your head for your entire life, that you never have to worry about losing. So we want to have a home where you have no mortgage payment. Second is we need to have an investment. We need to have an investment that's going to generate the monthly income that you need to pay your bills. So if you have a home with no mortgage payment, you're still going to have expenses like food, like car expenses, whether that's a car payment or just fuel. You want to have some traveling money, things like that. So you still need to have income, even though you would only have a property with no mortgage payment. So what our objective is we're going to take this first investment and we're going to turn this into a rental. So keep it in mind that if you purchased this property 5 years ago and your housing expense is $2,372, a $535,000 property in today's market is going to typically rent for somewhere around $2,400, $2,500, $2,600 a month. That's typically a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. So we're, for our conversation here, going to use a rental income of $2,400 a month. So as you can see, your rental income is covering your monthly housing expense. Each year, if you increase your rents an average of 3.5%, and where we arrived at that number is for the past 25 years, rents in Southern California have risen an average of 4.2%. So 3.5% is a very realistic number, and in fact, is a little bit on the conservative side. In 5 years, the rental income would have grown from $2,400 to $2,850. 10 years, $4,307. 15 years, $5,115. Now, what we're analyzing here is where it says net cash flow of $480. That's tied at the 5-year point. So here's what the objective is if you were to increase your rents, the 3.5% each year, and you apply that extra rental income to your mortgage balance, what you're going to do is you're going to accelerate the payoff. So if we recall, you purchased this property 5 years ago for $400,000, which means since 5 years has elapsed, you have 25 years left on your loan. You turn this property into a rental, and we start gradually applying each year the increase in the rents to your mortgage balance. What we're going to do is, by doing that each year, accelerate the mortgage payoff, and within 15 years, we will have this property completely paid off. All right, investment 2. What our objective is here is to buy a second property. In most cases, it's somewhat of a lateral move. And the reason for that is making sure that it's affordable. The projected purchase price for a lateral move would be $535,000. Now, if you're purchasing this second property, FHA, your down payment would be $18,725. Now, you might say, Mark, I don't have $18,000. I can't buy this second property. Well, here's my response to that is you do have the $18,000. Where the $18,000 is, if you don't have it in the bank, you don't have it in another investment, it's in that first property. The equity that you would have built up in that first property would make it very easy for you to obtain this $18,000. Here's what we can do is we can get an equity line of credit for $20,000 on your first investment. A $20,000 equity line is going to cost you about 5% in interest. So if you take 5% times $20,000, it's $1,000 a year in interest. You divide that by 12, you're talking about $85 a month. So using the power of leverage, so the equity built up in that first property, if you haven't been able to save the money for the second down payment, you can simply use this equity line, which again is further leverage, to purchase the second property. Your new mortgage balance on the second property would be $516,275, and your mortgage term would be 30 years. Now, some of you might say, whoa, all this leverage is starting to make me nervous. Here's the key to managing your leverage. It's cash flow. We're not going to be doing this every single year because we don't want to create massive negative cash flow. What we want to do is we're going to analyze our cash flow, and we're going to be looking at these investments in typically 5 to 7 year periods, depending on what happens with inflation rates and appreciation rates on property. So cash flow management is just as important in this as the leverage management. Your mortgage of $2,465, your taxes would be $557, your insurance $150, and again, we're assuming it's not a condo that has association dues. Your total monthly payment on this new property would be $3,172 per month. Now, you might first look at that and say, and analyze whether that $3,100 payment increase, because you're looking at a payment increase of about $700 a month, whether that's going to be a challenge for you or not. If it's not, then fantastic. But if it is, here's an option for you to consider, is by renting the first property out, you're going to have a slight positive cash flow. You can choose to not apply that positive cash flow to paying off the home so quickly and help it to offset the new mortgage payment on the property, on the new property that you would be purchasing. So let's analyze the equity buildup or the wealth buildup that you would have on this second property. In 5 years, the property value would increase to $715,950. Your loan balance would decline to $477,000, and your equity would grow to $238,000. Again, we're using a 6% appreciation rate, which is lower than the 46-year historical average for the state of California. In 10 years, your equity would have grown to $539,000. In 15 years, $934,000. And in 20 years, you now have a second property with an equity of $1,400,000. Now you'll notice I have on the reverse mortgage year. When you reach the age of 62, you are eligible for a reverse mortgage. The other item that is required for qualifying a reverse mortgage is that your equity position be approximately 50% or less. As you can see in this, using the 15-year or 20-year scenario, we're in a place that we could easily meet that criteria. The option of obtaining a reverse mortgage, the benefit this provides is that at age 62, you can be in a place where you can refinance into a reverse mortgage and eliminate your housing expense. And so if you look at the 15-year mark, where you would be is if you started at 47 years old, then in 15 years, you turn 62, you take investment 2, put it into a reverse mortgage, you now have a home you're living in with no mortgage payment for the balance of your life. And if you had chosen to apply the increase in the monthly cash flow on investment number 1, that rental income, that property would be completely paid off. So you would have the monthly income that you need to live on each month with no housing expense, and you'd have achieved financial freedom. So let's analyze what your projected 25-year net worth will be. Is on investment 1, you would have a $1,187,000 equity position. On investment 2, a $1.4 million return. Your total net worth on these two properties would be over $2,600,000. And don't forget, the important point is in the scenario that we've outlined, is you purchased the first property with only $14,000 down. You've turned $14,000 into $2,600,000. You own two properties, neither having a mortgage payment. The second one, there's not a mortgage payment because you've used a reverse mortgage. The first one you've paid off entirely. So you have a positive cash flow, monthly income of $5,100 a month. If you're 62 and you have Social Security, you can add that on top. So now you're going to have somewhere around $6,500 a month in income with two properties, with no mortgage payments, and a $2.6 million net worth on just these two investments. The Mark 1 Life to No Money Worries plan will guide you to a better life of financial security and peace of mind. We'll provide you the knowledge and guide you every step of the way so that you never have to worry about money again. Our role is assisting you with the mortgage planning in this process and the mortgage retirement. Your savings plan, which is saving up money for your down payments if you'd like. Again, you can use the leverage factor and achieve the financial freedom that you need and desire without saving any money. The cash flow management, having a cash flow plan, understanding and managing rate of return on your investments, a long-term investment strategy to accumulate it. We've shown you here just a simple two-step process of 2 properties. We can show you, if you're more ambitious than that, on how you can use these strategies to accumulate many more properties and many more millions of dollars. And tax deductions. Now, we are not accountants. We're not certified public accountants. We can refer you to the best CPAs in the market, but understanding the tax benefits to real estate is important, because in our rate of return that we have shared with you in this presentation, we have not included any of the tax benefits. When you include the tax benefits, the rates of return that we have shown you here increase, and they increase significantly. So our role is to be your real estate planner in helping you to establish financial freedom and financial peace of mind. Thank you. So this concludes our presentation. You can email or call in your questions to the number on the screen starting now. Thank you.